Blood dripped from Hazel Wilkins' side as she climbed the rickety ladder into the hayloft, each movement sending fresh pain through her wounded body. The posse would be looking for her by now, no doubt with those lying Thornton brothers leading the charge, eager to finish what they'd started when she refused their father's offer to buy her land. Arizona Territory, 1884. The unforgiving summer heat had turned the world into a furnace, but Hazel couldn't afford to rest, not with men hunting her like a wounded deer. Her father's small ranch, the only thing he'd left her when consumption took him last winter, was all she had. She wouldn't let the Thorntons steal it, no matter how powerful they were in Willow Creek. Hazel collapsed onto the sweet-smelling hay, pressing her hand against the bleeding wound. The bullet had only grazed her side, but it bled something fierce. She'd escaped on her mare when the Thornton men came shooting, but the horse had thrown her about 3 miles back, spooked by a rattlesnake. She'd walked until she spotted this isolated barn, hoping to hide until nightfall. Her eyelids grew heavy as exhaustion, and blood loss took their toll. The sound of approaching hoofbeats jerked her back to alertness. She crawled deeper into the shadows of the hayloft, drawing her father's old revolver with trembling hands. The barn door creaked open below. Hazel held her breath, finger resting against the trigger. Heavy boots crossed the wooden floor, followed by the sound of someone climbing the ladder to the loft. A man's head appeared, then broad shoulders. He wasn't one of the Thornton men she'd memorized their faces. This cowboy was younger, with a weathered face that spoke of long days under the sun, and eyes that widened when they spotted her huddled form and the blood staining her simple blouse. "Easy now," he said softly, raising his hands when he saw her gun. "I don't mean you any harm." "Get out," Hazel whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. The cowboy remained halfway up the ladder, studying her with careful eyes. "You're hurt, bleeding pretty bad from the looks of it. It's nothing. Don't look like nothing." He hesitated, then said, "You can rest here. This is my land, my barn. Nobody will find you if that's what you're worried about." Hazel's vision blurred, the gun suddenly too heavy in her hand. "How do I know I can trust you?" "Name's Reese Morgan. I've got no love for trouble, but I won't turn away someone who needs help." He climbed the rest of the way into the loft, moving slowly. "I can tend that wound, bring you water, or I can leave you be. Your choice." The room spun as Hazel tried to focus on his face. "The Thorntons," she managed to say before darkness swept over her, the revolver slipping from her fingers as consciousness fled. When Hazel woke, the golden light of sunset filtered through the cracks in the barn walls. She was lying on a blanket, her side bandaged with clean cloth. Her blouse had been removed, but a man's shirt covered her, several sizes too large. Panic flared until she remembered where she was and what had happened. "You're awake." She turned to see the cowboy Reese sitting a respectful distance away. A canteen and plate of food rested beside him. "I cleaned and bandaged your wound," he said. "It's not too deep, but you lost some blood. Hope you don't mind about the shirt. Yours was soaked through." Hazel pulled herself up to sitting position, wincing at the pain. "Thank you," he nodded, pushing the plate and canteen toward her. "You should eat something. Build your strength back." The plate held beans, jerky, and a slice of cornbread. Hazel realized suddenly how hungry she was, taking the food gratefully. They sat in silence as she ate, Reese occasionally glancing toward the barn door. "You mentioned the Thorntons," he said finally. "Jacob Thornton and his boys." Hazel tensed. "You know them." "Know of them. Hard not to in these parts." His expression darkened. "They've been buying up all the land around Willow Creek one way or another." "They want my father's ranch," Hazel said, her voice hardening. "Came by 3 days ago offering to buy it. When I refused, they said I'd regret it. This morning they showed up with guns. Reese's jaw tightened. They shot you. I was out checking the fence line. Saw them riding up and knew they meant trouble. Made it back to the house and grabbed Pa's gun, but they started shooting before I could reach the door. I fired back, hit one of them in the shoulder, I think. Then I ran for my horse. You hit Clay Thornton, Reese said with a hint of admiration. Word's spreading already. They're saying you ambushed them, that you're a dangerous woman. Fear clutched at Hazel's heart. They'll hang me if they catch me. They'd have to catch you first. Reese's voice was quiet but determined. And I don't plan on letting that happen. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. He was silent for a long moment. I know what it's like to be on the wrong side of men like the Thorntons, men who think their money and guns give them the right to take whatever they want. His eyes met hers. And I know what it's like to lose everything. Something in his voice made Hazel believe him. Still, caution kept her wary. I can't stay here. They'll be searching everywhere. This place is a fair distance from town. My nearest neighbor is 5 miles away. Reese stood up, dusting hay from his pants. Rest tonight. In the morning, we'll figure out what to do. As he moved toward the ladder, Hazel called after him. Mr. Morgan, he turned. Thank you for not turning me away. A small smile touched his lips. Get some sleep, Miss Wilkins. Hazel Wilkins. Miss Wilkins. He nodded and descended the ladder, leaving Hazel alone with her thoughts and the dying light of day. Reese returned to the hayloft at dawn, carrying a basket covered with a cloth. Hazel was already awake, her hair damp from washing with water from the canteen he'd left. She'd rolled up the sleeves of his oversized shirt and tied it at her waist. Brought you some breakfast, he said, setting down the basket, and something that might fit you better than my shirt. Under the cloth lay fresh biscuits, a jar of preserves, and a simple blue dress. Hazel looked at him questioningly. It belonged to my sister, Reese explained. She's been gone a long while now, but I kept some of her things. I'm sorry, Hazel said softly. He shrugged, the movement dismissive but his eyes revealing the pain behind it. Consumption, same as took my parents, my father too, Hazel said. Last winter. Reese nodded, a moment of understanding passing between them. I'll give you privacy to change. When you're ready, come down to the house. We need to talk about what happens next. Hazel ate the biscuits hungrily, then changed into the blue dress. It was a little large in the shoulders but otherwise fit well enough. Her side ached when she moved, but the bleeding had stopped. She made her way carefully down the ladder. Outside, the morning light revealed a modest homestead, a small house with a covered porch, the barn where she'd hidden, a corral with several horses and fields stretching beyond. Mountains rose in the distance and a creek ran along the edge of the property. Reese was waiting on the porch, a cup of coffee in his hand. He stood when he saw her, his expression unreadable as he took in her appearance in his sister's dress. The blue suits you, he said, then quickly looked away. There's coffee inside. The house was simple but neat, a main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen area, and 2 doors leading to what Hazel assumed were bedrooms. A bookshelf held more volumes than she would have expected for a solitary rancher. You read a lot, she observed as he poured her coffee. Winters are long out here. He gestured for her to sit at the rough-hewn table. I rode into town at first light. Thorntons have a posse of 20 men searching for you. They're offering $100 for information on your whereabouts. Hazel's hands tightened around the coffee cup. I should leave. I'm putting you in danger by staying. And where would you go? They've got men watching the roads, the train station. Even if you made it to another town, word would follow. What choice do I have? I can't hide forever. Reese was quiet for a moment. There's a U.S. Marshal passing through Willow Creek tomorrow. Name's Buchanan. He's a fair man from what I hear. If we could get your story to him before the Thorntons. You think he'd believe me over them? They practically own the county, not the federal government, and there's been talk about the Thorntons' methods for some time. You might not be their first victim, just the first to fight back. Hope flickered briefly, then died. I still can't reach him without being caught. I could go, Reese offered. Speak to him on your behalf. Why would you do that? Risk yourself for a stranger. Reese's eyes fixed on the window, watching the distant horizon. 2 years ago, the Thorntons wanted my land for the water rights. I refused to sell. One night, my barn caught fire. Lost my entire hay crop, nearly lost my livestock. Sheriff said it was probably lightning, despite there being no storm. He turned back to Hazel. I needed the money after that. Had to sell half my herd to survive the winter. Come spring, they offered again half what they'd offered before. I took it because I had no choice. Understanding dawned on Hazel's face. That's why you're helping me. Revenge, justice, he corrected. And maybe the chance to do what I couldn't do, then stand up to them. Hazel considered his words. Even if Marshal Buchanan believes your story, it's still my word against theirs about the shooting. Maybe not. Do you have the deed to your ranch? Yes, in a tin box under a floorboard in my bedroom. If we could get that deed, prove your rightful ownership. And maybe find evidence of the Thorntons' threats. I keep a journal, Hazel said, straightening. I wrote about their visit, their threats. It's with the deed. A plan began to form between them. Reese would ride to Hazel's ranch that night, retrieve the deed and journal, and then meet with Marshal Buchanan the following day. Meanwhile, Hazel would remain hidden at Reese's homestead. As darkness fell, Reese prepared to leave. He gave Hazel a spare revolver, showing her how to use the unfamiliar model. Stay inside, keep the lamps low, he instructed. If anyone comes, I know how to shoot, she assured him. My father made sure of that. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. I don't doubt it. You managed to wing Clay Thornton, after all. Despite the gravity of the situation, a small smile touched Hazel's lips. He moved at the last second. I was aiming for his chest. Reese's laugh was unexpected, a warm sound that momentarily lightened the tension between them. Remind me never to cross you, Miss Wilkins. He mounted his horse, a sturdy buckskin gelding. I should be back before dawn. Bolt the door behind me. Hazel nodded, watching as he rode off into the darkness, his figure soon swallowed by the night. She returned to the house, secured the door as instructed, and settled in for a long, anxious wait. Hours passed. Hazel tried to distract herself by examining Reese's books, histories, adventure novels, even a few volumes of poetry that surprised her. She found herself wondering about this solitary cowboy who read Whitman and Byron, who kept his sister's dresses years after her death, who risked himself for a stranger's cause. A noise outside startled her from her thoughts. Hoofbeats, approaching fast. Too soon to be Reese returning. Hazel doused the lamp and moved to the window, peering cautiously through the curtain. 3 riders dismounted in the yard, their faces indistinct in the moonlight. One pointed toward the barn, another toward the house. The third, a tall figure with a distinctive limp, headed for the porch. Reuben Thornton, Jacob's youngest son. Hazel would recognize that limp anywhere, the result of a horse-breaking accident years ago. She gripped the revolver, moving away from the window as boots thudded on the porch steps. A heavy knock rattled the door. Morgan, open up. We know you're in there. Hazel held her breath, pressing against the wall beside the door. Reese Morgan, Reuben called again. Sheriff wants a word with you about the Wilkins woman. When no answer came, the men conferred in low voices. Hazel heard one say, check the barn, while another suggested, maybe he's not home. His horse is gone, the third agreed. But let's have a look around anyway. Pa says Morgan might know something. Footsteps circled the house. Hazel heard someone trying the back door, then the scrape of someone peering through windows. She remained motionless, the revolver ready. A crash from the kitchen made her jump. Someone had broken a window. Hazel moved silently into the bedroom, positioning herself behind the door as heavy boots crunched on broken glass. "Nobody home," a voice called. "But someone's been here recently. Coffee pot's still warm." More footsteps entered the house. Hazel's heart pounded so loudly she feared they might hear it. "Morgan's probably in town," someone said. "Let's wait for him." "Nah, sheriff needed us back tonight. We'll catch up with him tomorrow." It was Reuben's voice, authoritative and impatient. "Take anything that might tell us where he's gone." Hazel listened as they rummaged through the main room, papers rustling, drawers opening and closing. After what seemed an eternity, they finally departed, their horses' hooves fading into the distance. She waited another 20 minutes before emerging from the bedroom, shaking with delayed fear and rage. They had ransacked Reese's home, drawers emptied onto the floor, books pulled from shelves, even the mattress on his bed upended. All because he had chosen to help her. Guilt and determination warred within her. Reese was risking everything for her cause. She would not let his sacrifice be in vain. Hazel began restoring order to the house, all the while listening for any sound that might signal the men's return, or hopefully, Reese's safe arrival. It was nearly dawn when she heard a horse approaching at a walk, not a gallop, someone trying to move quietly. Hazel positioned herself by the window, revolver ready, and peered out. Relief flooded through her at the sight of Reese dismounting from his buckskin. She hurried to unbolt the door. His expression changed from wariness to alarm when he saw her face. "What happened?" "Thornton men," she explained quickly. "3 of them, including Reuben. They searched the house but didn't find me. They're gone now." Reese cursed under his breath as he entered and saw the disarray. "Are you hurt?" "No, I hid in the bedroom. But Reese, they know you're involved somehow. They said the sheriff wants to question you about me." He nodded grimly, removing his hat and running a hand through his dust-streaked hair. "I expected as much. The Thorntons have eyes everywhere." He reached into his saddlebag and withdrew a small metal box and a leather-bound book. "I got what we needed, though." Hazel took her father's deed box and journal with trembling hands. "Was anyone there?" "2 men watching the house. I approached from the creek bed, slipped in through the back window." He looked at her with newfound respect. "You weren't exaggerating about the Thorntons being after your land. They've already started clearing brush near your north pasture, marking trees for cutting." Anger flared in Hazel's chest. "They have no right." "No, they don't, and now we can prove it." Reese gestured to the journal. "Is it in there, the record of their threats?" Hazel nodded, opening the journal to entries from the previous week. She detailed Jacob Thornton's visit, his offer to buy the ranch, and his thinly veiled threats when she refused. She'd also recorded yesterday's attack, writing the entry in haste before fleeing. "This should help convince Marshal Buchanan," Reese said. "I need to ride into town in a few hours to meet him." "After what happened tonight, they'll be watching for you," Hazel warned. "I know, but I still have friends in Willow Creek, people who have no love for the Thorntons." He checked his pocket watch. "You should try to get some rest." "I'll keep watch for a while." Despite her exhaustion, Hazel helped Reese restore order to the house first. As they worked side by side, she found herself stealing glances at him, the careful way he handled his sister's few remaining possessions, the quiet determination in his movements, the occasional softening of his expression when their eyes met. When the house was finally put right, Reese insisted she take his bed while he rested on a chair by the window, rifle across his lap. Hazel was too tired to argue, though the intimacy of sleeping in his bed made her cheeks warm. She fell into a deep sleep, only to be awakened a few hours later by Reese's gentle hand on her shoulder. "Hazel," he said softly, the first time he'd used her given name, "I need to leave soon." She sat up quickly, wincing at the pain in her side. Reese noticed and frowned. "Let me check your wound before I go." Hazel hesitated, then nodded, turning slightly so he could examine the bandage at her side. His hands were gentle as he peeled back the edge of the dressing. "It's healing clean," he said, relief evident in his voice. "No signs of infection." "Thank you," she said, suddenly aware of his proximity, of the morning light casting shadows on his face, revealing lines of worry and fatigue. "You should be the one resting, not me. You've been up all night." A tired smile touched his lips. "I've gone longer without sleep. Comes with the territory." He replaced the bandage carefully. "I've left food on the table. Stay inside, keep watch if I'm not back by nightfall." "You will be," Hazel said with more confidence than she felt. Reese stood, adjusting his gun belt and checking his revolver. "The nearest neighbor who might help is the Hendersons, 5 miles west. If something happens, take my horse and go there. Martha Henderson is a good woman, she'll help you." Hazel followed him to the door. "Be careful," he turned, studying her face as if memorizing it. "I will." He hesitated, then added, "When this is over, when you're safe and back on your land, I'd like to call on you properly, Miss Wilkins, if you'd permit it." The request, so formal and unexpected, brought warmth to Hazel's cheeks. "I'd like that, Mr. Morgan." A smile transformed his weather-worn face, making him look younger, almost boyish. With a nod, he settled his hat on his head and departed, mounting his horse with the fluid grace of a man who'd spent his life in the saddle. Hazel watched until he disappeared from view, her heart filled with a strange mixture of fear and hope. Then she bolted the door and settled in to wait. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. Hazel occupied herself by reading Reese's books, cleaning his already tidy kitchen, and checking her wound. By mid-afternoon, restlessness drove her to peek out windows, scanning the horizon for any sign of riders, friendly or otherwise. It was nearing dusk when she heard hoofbeats. Many hoofbeats, not just one horse. Heart racing, she grabbed the revolver and moved to the window. What she saw made her blood run cold. 6 riders approached, and at their center, a man with his hands bound to his saddle horn Reese. Even from a distance, she could see blood on his face. Jacob Thornton himself led the group, his white beard and imposing figure unmistakable even in the fading light. They stopped in the yard, and 2 men roughly pulled Reese from his horse. "Search the house," Thornton ordered. "Find the woman." Hazel's mind raced. She couldn't escape, they'd see her if she tried to run for the barn. The bedroom window was too small. That left only one option. She raced to the fireplace, grateful that Arizona nights were cool enough that Reese kept firewood stacked beside it. She found what she was looking for, a loose stone in the back of the hearth, creating a small space just large enough to hide her father's deed box and journal. She quickly stashed them and replaced the stone. Footsteps pounded on the porch. No time to hide herself. Hazel straightened, gripping the revolver. If they were taking her in, she wouldn't go without a fight. The door burst open. 2 men entered, guns drawn, followed by Jacob Thornton himself. "Miss Wilkins," he said, his voice deceptively mild. "How kind of you to wait for us." Hazel raised the revolver, aiming it steadily at his chest. Thornton chuckled. "I wouldn't, my dear. Your friend Morgan already tried to play hero. See where it got him." He gestured toward the yard where Reese was on his knees, a gun to his head. "Put down the weapon, or Todd there will put a bullet in your cowboy's skull." Defeat tasted bitter as Hazel lowered the gun, allowing one of Thornton's men to take it from her hand. "That's better," Thornton said. "Now let's all have a civil conversation. I believe you have something that belongs to me." I have nothing of yours, Hazel replied coldly. Oh, but you do. Your father's ranch, or rather my ranch now. You see, John Wilkins borrowed a substantial sum from me before his death, loans that were never repaid. He produced a folded document from his coat pocket. I have the papers right here. That's a lie, Hazel spat. My father owed no man money. The bank records say otherwise. Thornton's smile never reached his eyes. Now, where is the deed to the property? My son searched your house but couldn't find it. Gone. I burned it. The blow came swiftly, the back of Thornton's hand connecting with her cheek, sending her stumbling against the table. Outside, she heard Reese shout in protest, followed by the dull sound of a fist striking flesh. I'm not a patient man, Miss Wilkins, Thornton said, flexing his hand. The deed, if you please, and any other documents you might have. Journals, letters, anything pertaining to our business arrangements. Hazel touched her stinging cheek, hatred burning in her eyes. There are no arrangements. You're trying to steal my land, just like you stole Mr. Morgan's. Stole. I paid for Morgan's property, fair and square. Thornton glanced around the modest house with contempt. Though I probably overpaid looking at this pitiful excuse for a ranch. After you burned his barn and forced him into debt, Hazel accused. Something dangerous flickered in Thornton's eyes. Careful with your accusations, girl. Slander is a serious matter. He turned to his men. Search the house. Tear it apart if you have to. Hazel was forced into a chair while the men ransacked the house for a second time in 24 hours. They were more thorough now, ripping up floorboards, slashing the mattress, even checking behind the stones of the fireplace. Hazel held her breath when they neared the loose stone, but they missed it in their haste. After half an hour of destruction, the men reported finding nothing. Thornton's face darkened with rage. Get Morgan in here. They dragged Reese into the house, his face bruised, a cut above his eye bleeding freely. Despite his injuries, his eyes sought Hazel's immediately, silently asking if she was all right. She gave a small nod. Your lady friend is being uncooperative, Morgan, Thornton said. Perhaps you can persuade her to be reasonable. I don't know what you're talking about, Reese replied, his voice steady despite his condition. The deed to the Wilkins ranch. She's hidden it somewhere, along with a journal that might contain some mischaracterizations of our business dealings. Reese's expression remained impassive. Haven't seen any deed. Thornton sighed dramatically. I was hoping we could resolve this civilly. He nodded to one of his men, who drove a fist into Reese's stomach, doubling him over. Stop it. Hazel cried, rising from her chair only to be roughly pushed back down. The deed, Miss Wilkins, Thornton repeated calmly, or Mr. Morgan will suffer far worse than a few bruises. Hazel looked from Thornton's cold eyes to Reese's determined face. He gave a subtle shake of his head. Don't tell them. Marshal Buchanan knows everything, Reese said, straightening despite his pain. I spoke with him this morning, showed him evidence of your threats against Miss Wilkins, your men shooting at her. Thornton laughed. Marshal Buchanan left town at noon, called away to Prescott on urgent business. Unfortunate timing. His smile was like a snake's. By the time he returns, this matter will be settled one way or another. Fear clenched Hazel's heart as she realized their plan had failed. There would be no justice from the law, not today, perhaps not ever. Now, Thornton continued, I'm growing tired of this game. Miss Wilkins, where is the deed? Before Hazel could respond, hoofbeats sounded outside, a single rider approaching at speed. Everyone tensed. One of Thornton's men moved to the window. It's the sheriff, he reported. Thornton relaxed. Perfect timing. Sheriff Collins is a reasonable man. He'll take you both into custody for proper questioning. The door opened to admit Sheriff Collins, a heavy-set man with a drooping mustache and eyes that never quite met anyone else's. Jacob, he greeted Thornton. "I see you found them." "Indeed we did, Sheriff. The woman was hiding here just as we suspected. And Morgan was aiding her, interfering with the law." Collins nodded, his gaze sweeping over the destruction of Reese's home, Hazel's bruised face, and Reese's battered condition without comment. "Well, I'll take it from here. Need to bring them both in." "Of course." Thornton gestured to his men to release Reese. "Though I should mention, Miss Wilkins has hidden some documents. We need to settle this land dispute. Perhaps a more thorough questioning at the jail might loosen her tongue." The sheriff cleared his throat uncomfortably. "About that, Jacob." "There's been a development." He shifted his weight. "Marshal Buchanan didn't leave town after all. He's at my office now with some telegram from the territorial governor." The blood drained from Thornton's face. "What telegram?" "Something about investigating land acquisition practices in the county. The governor's received complaints." Collins looked distinctly uneasy. "Marshal's asking to see you and your boys right away." A tense silence filled the room. Hazel hardly dared to breathe as she watched calculation and fury war in Thornton's expression. "Fine," he said finally. "We'll go speak with the marshal, but these two come with us." "Actually," Collins said, finding some small measure of backbone, "the marshal specifically asked that I bring Morgan and the woman to him directly. Said he needs their testimony." Thornton's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, Hazel thought he might strike the sheriff. Instead, he turned to his men. "Let's go. We have nothing to hide from any federal marshal." As Thornton and his men filed out, the sheriff approached Reese and Hazel. When the door closed behind the last of Thornton's party, Collins's demeanor changed entirely. "They gone?" he asked in a low voice, peering out the window. "What's going on, Sheriff?" Reese asked, wariness evident in his voice. Collins turned, looking genuinely remorseful. "There's no marshal waiting at my office, Morgan. No telegram from the governor either." Hazel's heart sank. "Then why?" "Because Lucas Henderson rode into town an hour ago, told me Thornton and his men were headed this way with blood in their eyes." Collins shook his head. "I've turned a blind eye to too much over the years. Let Thornton have his way because it was easier than fighting him. But murder's where I draw the line." "So you lied to get them away from us," Reese realized. "It won't hold them for long," Collins warned. "Once they reach town and find no marshal waiting, they'll be back, with more men and more guns." He adjusted his gun belt. "You two need to be long gone by then." Hope surged in Hazel's chest. "You're helping us escape." "Helping you get to real justice," Collins corrected. "Marshal Buchanan is in Prescott, if you can reach him with your evidence before Thornton catches up to you." He shrugged. "Maybe things change around here." Reese studied the sheriff's face. "Why now, Collins? You've backed Thornton for years." A shadow passed over the older man's features. "My boy Eddie wanted to start a small spread last year. Found a nice piece of land east of town. Thornton wanted it for water rights when Eddie refused to sell." He swallowed hard. 2 weeks later, my son was found with a broken neck at the bottom of Miller's Ravine. His horse was fine, grazing nearby." Understanding dawned on Hazel and Reese's faces. "I'm sorry," Hazel said softly. Collins nodded, his expression hardening. "You have maybe an hour before they realize they've been tricked, 2 if we're lucky. Can you ride, Miss Wilkins, with that wound?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Good. Take the trail through Henderson's property, then cut north toward Prescott. Avoid the main roads." He handed Reese a folded paper. "Map showing the back trails. Lucas Henderson will have fresh horses waiting for you at his place." Reese took the map, newfound respect in his eyes. "Thank you, Sheriff." "Don't thank me yet. Just get to Buchanan alive." Collins moved toward the door. "I'll head back to town, try to slow them down when they return, but you need to move fast." After the sheriff departed, Reese and Hazel sprang into action. She retrieved the deed box and journal from their hiding place while he gathered supplies, food, water, ammunition, bandages. "Can you really ride?" he asked, eyeing her wounded side. "I have to," she replied simply. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Let's go, then." They saddled Reese's 2 remaining horses, the buckskin for him and a bay mare for Hazel. As they prepared to leave, Reese took a last look at his home. "I'm sorry," Hazel said, following his gaze. "They destroyed everything looking for the deed. Things can be replaced." His eyes found hers. "People can't." The simple statement warmed her heart despite their desperate situation. They mounted up and rode out, following the creek bed to avoid leaving obvious tracks, the setting sun casting long shadows across the land. They reached the Henderson ranch just as darkness fell completely. Lucas Henderson, a tall man with a silver-streaked beard, was waiting with fresh horses as promised. "Sheriff Collins sent word," he explained as they quickly transferred their supplies to the new mounts. "My boy will take your horses back to your place, Morgan. Make it look like you're still there if Thornton's men come checking." "We can't thank you enough," Hazel said. Henderson waved away her gratitude. "Time enough for thanks when the Thorntons get what's coming to them. Now go. The North Trail through the mountains will keep you off the main roads." They rode through the night, pushing the horses as hard as they dared on the rough terrain. The mountain trail was treacherous in darkness, forcing them to slow frequently. By dawn, they were deep in the high country, following a narrow path that wound between towering pines. "We should rest," Reese said as they reached a small clearing beside a stream. "Let the horses drink. Check your wound." Hazel nodded, too exhausted to argue. The pain in her side had grown steadily worse during the night, though she'd said nothing. As she dismounted, her legs buckled beneath her. Reese caught her before she hit the ground. "You're burning up," he said, his hand cool against her forehead. "I'm fine," she insisted, but even she could hear the weakness in her voice. Reese helped her to a soft patch of grass beneath a pine tree. He gently lifted her blouse, his sister's blouse, to examine the wound. His sharp intake of breath told her what she already suspected. "It's infected," he confirmed, his voice tight with concern. "The bandage must have shifted during the ride." Hazel closed her eyes briefly. "We can't stop, not for long. You need rest. Medicine." Reese's face was drawn with worry. "There's a small settlement about 3 hours ahead. They'll have supplies, maybe someone with medical knowledge." "Thornton will have men watching the settlements," Hazel argued. "We don't have a choice." Reese's voice was gentle but firm. "Without treatment, that infection will spread. You could lose more than your ranch." The gravity of his words sank in. Hazel nodded reluctantly. "A short stop, then." They rested for an hour, during which Reese cleaned her wound as best he could with water from the stream. He helped her remount, his hands steady and supportive, his eyes never leaving her face. The ride to the settlement was torturous. Hazel drifted in and out of awareness, the fever making the world around her shimmer strangely. Only Reese's arm around her waist, holding her in the saddle, kept her from falling. The settlement, little more than a trading post, a saloon, and a handful of cabins appeared through the trees around midday. Reese guided their horses to the back of the trading post, avoiding the main street. "Wait here," he instructed, helping her dismount and settle against the wall. "I'll find help." Hazel clutched his arm. "Be careful. Anyone could recognize you." He squeezed her hand reassuringly, then disappeared around the corner of the building. Minutes stretched like hours as Hazel waited, fighting to stay conscious. The wound throbbed in time with her heartbeat, and sweat dampened her hair despite the cool mountain air. Finally, Reese returned with an elderly woman whose weathered face spoke of a lifetime on the frontier. "This is Mrs. Blackwood," Reese explained. "She has medicine, a place where you can rest." "No time," Hazel protested weakly. "Child, you won't make it to Prescott in your condition," Mrs. Blackwood said bluntly. "Come inside before someone sees you." The woman's cabin was small but meticulously clean. She directed Reese to place Hazel on a narrow bed, then shoot him away while she examined the wound. "Bullet graze," she observed. "Nasty infection setting in. You're lucky you stopped when you did." She worked efficiently, cleaning the wound with a foul-smelling liquid that made Hazel gasp, then applying a poultice of herbs. Finally, she wrapped it with clean bandages and helped Hazel drink a bitter tea. "For the fever," she explained. "Rest now. The medicine will work faster if you sleep." Despite her determination to continue their journey, Hazel found herself unable to resist the pull of exhaustion. As her eyes closed, she felt Reese's calloused hand take hers, a silent promise that he would be there when she woke. She slept deeply, dreamlessly, and awoke to muted afternoon light filtering through a small window. The fever had broken and the pain in her side had dulled to a manageable ache. Reese was seated beside the bed, his head drooping in sleep, his hand still loosely holding hers. Hazel studied his face, the strong line of his jaw now darkened with stubble, the furrow between his brows that remained even in sleep, the long lashes resting against his cheeks. In the few days she'd known him, he had risked everything for her cause. For her. As if sensing her gaze, Reese stirred, his eyes opening to meet hers. Relief washed over his features when he saw her clear eyes, the healthy color returning to her cheeks. "You're better," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Much," she confirmed. "Mrs. Blackwood's medicine worked wonders. She's quite a woman, widow of an army doctor, knows more about healing than most physicians." He stretched, wincing slightly at the movement. "How do you feel? Strong enough to travel?" "Yes, we've lost too much time already." A shadow crossed his face. "There's something you should know. While you were sleeping, a rider came through town asking questions. One of Thornton's men." Fear clutched at Hazel's heart. "Did he see you?" "No, I was in here with you. Mrs. Blackwood spoke with him, told him she hadn't seen anyone matching our description." "But they know we're headed for Prescott." Reese nodded grimly. "They'll have men watching all the approaches to the town. We need to be smarter, find another way in." Mrs. Blackwood entered, carrying a tray with bread, cheese, and more of her medicinal tea. "Good, you're awake. You need to eat, build your strength." As they ate, the older woman provided valuable information. The Thorntons had indeed sent riders in all directions, offering rewards for information about Reese and Hazel's whereabouts, but they'd focused their main efforts on the direct routes to Prescott. "The old mining trail might be your best chance," Mrs. Blackwood suggested. "It's rough going, hardly used these days, but it comes into Prescott from the east, where they won't be watching so carefully." Reese considered this. "How long?" "A day's hard ride. Less if you push it." She looked at Hazel critically. "The girl can make it now. The fever's gone, and I've packed fresh poultice and bandages for the wound." They departed as dusk approached, with fresh supplies and Mrs. Blackwood's blessings. The old mining trail was as difficult as she'd warned, narrow, overgrown in places, crossing steep ravines and rocky slopes. But it was deserted, allowing them to ride without constantly looking over their shoulders. They traveled through the night again, stopping only briefly to rest the horses and check Hazel's wound. By dawn, they had descended from the mountains and could see Prescott in the distance, its buildings glowing golden in the early light. "We made it," Hazel said, a sense of wonder in her voice. "Almost," Reese cautioned. "The last stretch will be the most dangerous. Thornton's men will be watching." They approached the town cautiously, using groves of trees and shallow arroyos for cover. As they neared the outskirts, Reese spotted two riders positioned on a ridge overlooking the eastern road, sentries looking for them. "We need a distraction," he murmured, studying the terrain. Hazel followed his gaze, then pointed to a small ranch about half a mile south. "What about there?" "Could we get help?" Reese considered it. "Worth a try. The Martins own that spread. Good people, no love for the Thorntons." They circled wide, approaching the ranch from behind a line of cottonwoods. A young boy spotted them first, running to tell his father. Soon, John Martin himself came out to meet them, rifle in hand, until he recognized Reese. "Morgan, what in tarnation are you doing sneaking onto my property?" Briefly, Reese explained their situation. Martin's expression grew increasingly grim. "Thornton's finally gone too far," he said when Reese finished. "My brother lost his livelihood to that snake last year. I'll help you." His assistance proved invaluable. While his wife tended to Hazel's wound one final time, Martin and his sons created a diversion, driving a small herd of cattle toward town from the western approach, drawing the attention of Thornton's watchers. With the sentries distracted, Reese and Hazel slipped into Prescott unnoticed, making their way directly to the territorial marshal's office. They found Marshal Buchanan reviewing wanted posters, his weathered face showing surprise at their abrupt entrance. "Sir," Reese began, "we need your help. Jacob Thornton and his sons have been illegally seizing land throughout Willow Creek County." Buchanan's eyes narrowed. "That's a serious accusation, son. We have proof." Hazel stepped forward, placing her father's deed box and journal on his desk. "My name is Hazel Wilkins. They tried to force me off my land, then shot me when I refused to sell. Now they're claiming my father owed them money, but it's a lie." The marshal's expression remained impassive as he examined the documents, reading Hazel's journal entries with careful attention. When he reached the final entry describing the shooting, he looked up sharply. "You wounded Clay Thornton. In self-defense," Hazel confirmed. "They fired first." Buchanan nodded slowly. "I've been hearing rumors about the Thorntons for some time. Land deals that didn't quite add up. Ranchers selling for far less than market value after mysterious accidents." He glanced at Reese. "Your name came up in my inquiries, Mr. Morgan. They forced me to sell 2 years ago," Reese acknowledged, "after my barn burned. And now you're helping Miss Wilkins. It wasn't a question." "Yes, sir." The marshal studied them both for a long moment. "The governor has been concerned about corruption in the territory, land fraud, intimidation of settlers." He tapped Hazel's journal. "This could be the evidence we need to finally act against the Thorntons." Hope rose in Hazel's chest. "You believe us." "I believe evidence, Miss Wilkins, and yours is compelling." He stood, adjusting his gun belt. "I'll need to take sworn statements from both of you. Then I'll send telegrams to the governor and the federal district attorney. In the meantime, you'll stay under my protection." The process of providing formal statements took hours. By the time they finished, word had reached Prescott that Jacob Thornton himself was approaching town with a dozen armed men. "They're coming for us," Hazel said, fear and exhaustion evident in her voice. Marshal Buchanan remained calm. "Let them come. I've deputized 6 men already. The sheriff here knows his duty, unlike your Sheriff Collins back home." "Collins helped us escape," Reese pointed out. "He may have finally found his conscience, good for him. But too little, too late, I'd say." Buchanan guided them to a small room at the back of his office. "Rest here. You've done your part. Now let the law do its work." From the window of their sanctuary, Hazel and Reese watched as Thornton and his party rode into town, their faces set with determination. Marshal Buchanan met them in the street, backed by his deputies and the local sheriff. Words were exchanged too distant to hear, but the marshal's posture remained unyielding. When Jacob Thornton reached for his gun, two deputies immediately drew on him. After a tense standoff, Thornton and his men reluctantly surrendered their weapons. "He's arresting them," Hazel whispered in disbelief. Reese took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "It's over. They can't hurt you anymore." She turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, of the warmth of his hand around hers. "Thank you for everything. I would have died in that hayloft if not for you." His eyes softened as they met hers. "You saved yourself, Hazel. I just offered a place to rest." The events that followed unfolded with surprising swiftness. Based on Hazel's evidence and corroborating statements from other victims who came forward, Jacob Thornton and his sons were charged with fraud, attempted murder, and a host of other crimes. The territorial governor sent investigators who uncovered more evidence of the family's corruption, including bribery of local officials. Within weeks, the Thorntons' empire began to crumble. Properties illegally obtained were returned to their rightful owners. Hazel reclaimed her father's ranch, finding it neglected but salvageable. Reese, too, regained his land, the sale voided by the courts when evidence of intimidation came to light. He set about rebuilding what had been lost, starting with a new barn to replace the one the Thorntons had burned. Throughout those busy weeks of restoration, Hazel and Reese found countless reasons to visit each other's ranches. What had begun in desperation, a woman hiding in a hayloft, a cowboy offering sanctuary, blossomed into something deeper, nurtured by shared danger and mutual respect. On a golden autumn evening, 3 months after their flight to Prescott, Reese rode to Hazel's ranch. She met him on the porch, her smile brightening at the sight of him approaching. "I brought you something," he said, producing a small potted plant. "Mrs. Blackwood sent it. Said it's the herb she used in your poultice. Thought you might want to grow some just in case." Hazel accepted the gift, touched by the thoughtfulness. "I'll put it in the kitchen garden tomorrow." They sat together on the porch steps, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in shades of pink and gold. A comfortable silence settled between them, the ease of two people who had seen each other at their most vulnerable and most courageous. "Your father would be proud," Reese said eventually, his gaze taking in the freshly repaired fences, the new roof on the barn, the healthy cattle grazing in the pasture. "You've brought his ranch back to life." "Our fathers would both be proud, I think," Hazel replied, glancing at him. "Of what we've accomplished, what we've overcome." Reese nodded, then seemed to gather himself for something important. "Hazel, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." She turned to face him fully, her heart quickening at his serious tone. "That first morning in my house, when I said I'd like to call on you properly when it was all over." He took her hand in his. "I'd like to do more than call. I'd like to court you with the intention of making you my wife, if you'll have me." Joy bloomed in Hazel's chest, bright and warm as the setting sun. "I think I started falling in love with you the moment you climbed into that hayloft and told me I could rest there." "Is that a yes?" he asked, a smile beginning to curve his lips. "Yes," she said simply, leaning forward to press her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with all the emotion they'd held in check during their desperate flight, their fight for justice. When they finally parted, Reese rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Hazel Wilkins. Have since I found you in my hayloft, wounded but still fighting. And I love you, Reese Morgan, my cowboy, my savior," he laughed softly. "I think we saved each other." As darkness settled over the land, they remained on the porch, planning their future together. They would join their ranches, combine their herds, build a home large enough for the family they hoped to have. Children who would grow up knowing the value of courage, justice, and standing firm against those who would take what wasn't theirs. The following spring, They were married beneath the cottonwood trees by the creek that now connected their properties. Marshall Buchanan came from Prescott for the ceremony, as did Mrs. Blackwood, the Martins, the Hendersons, and even Sheriff Collins, who had finally found the courage to stand against corruption in Willow Creek. Years passed, bringing prosperity to their combined ranch and joy in the form of 3 children, 2 boys, and a girl who inherited their parents' strength and determination. The Thorntons became a cautionary tale, their name mentioned only in history books documenting the taming of the Arizona Territory. Sometimes on quiet evenings when the children were asleep, Hazel and Reese would sit on their porch and remember that first meeting, she hiding in the hayloft, wounded and desperate, he climbing up to find her, offering sanctuary with 4 simple words: "You can rest here." And she had rested, healed, and found not just safety but love in the most unexpected of places, a hayloft on a small ranch in the wild Arizona Territory, where a cowboy's kindness had changed the course of her life forever.